And let's take them in order. Your father, is he still in law enforcement, or is he now retired?
He's retired. He was retired from the Bureau of Prisons.
Okay.
And he was contracted Lexi, driver's training, Department of Homeland Security.
All right. And your ex-husband, what did he do?
He's military police.
All right. And then the family friend?
He's Glenn County police officer.
Glenn. Because of your military background, the next question we ask you, do you know anyone in the military? Obviously, you know a ton of people because of your work in the Air Force. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then I think you indicated you know somebody with legal training. You've already told us about your friend in Macon. Is there anyone else that you were thinking of?
My aunt, she's paralegal.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
My aunt is a paralegal.
Paralegal. Does she do any criminal work, do you know?
I don't think so. She's up in New England.
Obviously, you've got some medical training. We asked that question, and because you worked as a medic in the Air Force, you would have had some training. Do you know anyone else that's got medical training, other than people that you'd worked with?
My aunt, she's a nurse.
All right. Any pediatric nursing?
No.
The series of questions that we asked you about messaging and apps and things like that, you would indicate that you have some familiarity with at least messaging and those types of things. Explain in your own words your level of technology.
Not a guru, but not a beginner. Facebook, Instagram. I have a Twitter account, but I only used it once.
Okay.
That was like a few years ago. I'm familiar with the Whisper app, but the other ones, some of them that you mentioned, I'm not familiar with.
Gotcha. How are you familiar with Whisper?
I worked at the high school last year, and there was some kids talking about it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so if you're a parapro at the high school level, then just like our science teacher that we have on the front row, you guys probably have got your finger on the pulse a little bit about what the kids are up to.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. You know somebody's been arrested before?
Yes, sir.
Who's that?
My cousin, he had a DUI, and me when I was a teenager.
All right. Talk about your cousin first. Any opinion about how his case was handled within the criminal justice system? And what about you? I don't mean to pry or embarrass, but...
It was guilt by association.
All right.
My friend was stealing items that I didn't know about, and she walked out. I got busted with her.
All right. What happened to the case? You were juvenile at the time?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was like 16. I was told by my parents that it was taken off my record because they got a lot of lawyers.
Sure.
You know.
But we've run everybody's records, and we didn't see it on there. So because you're juvenile, it's not there. We did see something. We have to run records now to make sure that people aren't felons on our jury. So we have those for everybody in the courtrooms, not singling you out. But you'll be pleased to know we didn't see anything there, so it clearly was a juvenile. Okay. I think you'd indicated, well, sticking on that topic, do you think you were treated fairly, all things considered?
Yeah, except for the security guard. He was kind of gloating.
Yeah.
Annoyed me.
There's nothing about that situation that would impact your ability to be fair here, though.
No.
You've given a statement to law enforcement before?
Yes, sir.
And tell me about that.
Someone broke into my car. When I was living in Germany, I was walking my dogs, and a woman came by me, and she was in tears, and she said her husband had just beaten her up.
Oh, I see.
So I took her to my house, and the interviews came over, and I had a good statement.
Okay. You know somebody that's been involved in some sort of romantic relationship online?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
My cousin, he met his soon-to-be wife.
There was a question, just tell me if you had an affirmative response. Let's not talk about the details right now. But did you raise your hand when the question was posed? Anyone here know anyone that's forgot or left a child somewhere but not in a car? Did you raise your hand?
I did. It wasn't in a car.
Okay, hold off on that. I want to ask some questions about that in private, but I wanted to make sure first that I adequately documented that you were one of the ones that raised your hand.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That wasn't a mistake then on my part.
No.
You indicated that you transport children. I think I know the reason for that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I don't think I have anything more for you other than some questions in private in just a few moments.
Hey, good afternoon. All right, just to follow up, first on what Mr. Evans was asking about, your former husband was a military police.
Still.
Still is.
Yes, sir.
Also Air Force?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that how y'all met?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right, 9/11.
All right, and then you indicated you have a friend who is a police officer in Glenn County?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is this a family friend or just a personal friend of yours?
Personal friend, I met him since we were in elementary school.
Okay. So it's not a boyfriend?
No.
Okay. All right, you told us about being arrested at 16, and you said that a friend was stealing.
Yes, sir.
You talking about shoplifting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You didn't know your friend is shoplifted. Y'all walked out of the store together, and buzzers went off.
No, I think the rent-a-call was watching us because he was coming out and she was watching her on the video, and I was with her. I was out in the store when she was taking stuff.
Okay. So you're not holding a grudge after all these years, are you?
No, we're actually still friends with the girl.
Okay.
Although I don't go shopping with her anymore.
That's good. That's good. So the security guard, the rent-a-cop, you said, he comes up and he gets y'all. And did you tell him, hey, I didn't have anything to do with this?
I thought it was a joke.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because he started accusing us.
Okay.
He started grabbing our purses.
All right.
And it's like, okay, this isn't a joke. Why he's grabbing my purse? And he said that we had stolen some stuff. I hadn't stolen anything. My friend started getting red in the face. She was just like, well, I have some stuff.
Okay.
There it goes.
And so they probably set y'all in an office.
Yes, sir.
And then he called
They went to the county.
the police.
Yes.
The police officer gets there, and did you tell him the same thing?
Yes, sir.
I didn't have anything to do with this.
So they different.
He didn't believe you. Okay. And eventually, your parents had to hire a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in the end, it worked out. Okay. Did you ever have to go to court?
No.
All right. And by any chance, did your friend throw you under the bus that day, or did she?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
She took the blame for it.
That day?
Later on.
Okay.
While we're sitting in the detention facility.
Okay. All right. All right. Like, I think everybody on your panel, you indicated you had heard public service announcements, but I think you said in particular you heard public service announcements about not leaving pets in cars.
My sister's a crazy dog owner.
Okay.
When it starts to become summer, she's constantly posting stuff on her Facebook. It wasn't content on TV, it was just Facebook about leaving dogs in cars.
Okay. What kind of stuff does she post?
Homemade memes, I guess you want to call it, with, dogs in the cars. If I see you, I will break your window.
Okay.
Just crazy stuff like that.
Okay. And to the best of your recollection, that is, when you answered that question, that is the only thing that came to mind? That's the only thing you remember, the stuff your sister posts?
Well, just and people that I'm friends with, just, remember the temperature is getting warmer.
All right.
Look in the back seat, don't leave your animals.
Any articles? Ever see any articles posted on it? Videos? Okay. All right. You also, you have 3 children?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you too had done some research before purchasing your car seats?
Yes, sir.
All right. Same thing we've heard from the others. You were looking for quality and safety.
Yes, sir.
Did research on the internet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And I believe you answered yes to this question. At least one of your children falls into that category of children that fall asleep easily upon getting into the car seat, or quickly.
My son.
Okay.
He's a Mr. Stevens.
Is your son one of those that, to get him to go to sleep, sometimes you put him in the car just to drive him around?
No, sir.
The hum of the, no? You know anybody who does that with their kid?
I knew a friend when we were stationed at Scott Air Force Base. She used to take her children. She used to lull them to sleep in her van.
Okay. All right. When you indicated you had to hire an attorney, I'm assuming you were talking about your divorce.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You've known somebody who's had an affair?
Yes, sir.
Is that something that you can tell us about, or you're comfortable telling us about?
My ex.
Okay. All right. And you characterized your divorce as contested when I asked the question, meaning y'all didn't agree to everything.
Exactly.
Right.
We had mediation.
Yeah, mediation. Okay, so you didn't have to have a trial.
Not so much. The divorce happened in Spokane, Washington.
Okay.
Because I moved there about a year and a half ago, back home, and my lawyer stood in for me. So she did everything. She would send me stuff because I had to move back because I was getting kicked off the house. My ex was that. Do you remember?
Okay.
And I only had 30 days notice because I was going to wait until the summer to move back home. But it didn't happen. So I had to move.
All right, so y'all had disagreements about something, but it didn't require an actual trial.
No, not an actual trial.
Okay. Were there
Judge.
was a judge? Okay. You didn't have to go in and give testimony and tell the judge, hey, this is my side of the story. You didn't have to do that. Okay. You indicated you use Facebook, Instagram. You indicated you were familiar with Reddit.
Yes, sir.
How are you familiar with Reddit?
Just what juror number 34 said. People link it on Facebook.
Okay.
Click on it.
You don't use it to get videos or stories or information. Others use it, post it to Facebook, and
Yes. I'll just read on.
you realize that that's where it came from.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mostly articles.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question. You said that I asked if your significant other or children looked at pornographic websites, and your hand went up real fast. So your ex-husband?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Everything else, we're going to follow up in private. Thank you.
Last but not least, juror number 36. A few questions for you. You didn't have your hand up too much during general questions, so we should move pretty quickly. I'm sorry, what, can't I say that?
I'm pretty bored.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. Okay. You're in construction, correct?
I am.
Okay, and build homes specifically.
I had a business in Atlanta for like 25, 30 years. Lived in here 11 years ago.
Where'd you live in Atlanta?
We moved from Walton County, our last home.
Okay.
Sleepy Hollow Road.
All right, so you've been down here at the coast for the past 11 years, is that correct? Did you have any connection down here, or you just wanted to come be closer to the ocean?
My daughter went to Georgia Southern, and she knew a girl that knew a builder here.
Okay.
And I was up at Georgia Southern one weekend. We went to this place called Pieces, and she said, "You gonna get a job?" I said, "Well, I'm thinking about it." She said, "Well, call this guy." So I came here, and I sat around the house about 3 months, about went nuts. And I called this guy, and he said, "Yeah, come on." And so I've been with him for like 10 years.
Great. Well, that worked out. Just picking up the phone, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I've got your wife working at United Healthcare.
She works for United Health.
What does she do there?
She's a accounts manager.
All right. You have been involved or worked in a capacity where you can manage, hire, and fire. I assume that's with a construction company?
Yes.
Okay. How many employees at most?
I had 6 tops.
Who do you know in law enforcement?
Did I raise my hand for that?
I think you did, yeah. The question was, does anyone here know anyone that's ever worked in law enforcement before? I thought I had your hand, but if I'm mistaken, I'll just mark it off.
I knew a guy, Tyler Manson,
Okay.
in Conyers, Rockville County, but he does something else, and I think he got into civil.
Gotcha.
Civil something.
Do you know somebody that has been in the military?
Me,
Okay. What branch of the service, sir?
Army,
How long?
2 years.
I appreciate your service. When was that?
70, 71.
When it comes to social media and that type of thing, I'm not for you at all. You're making the...
Yes.
Okay. You text at all?
I didn't.
You have a Facebook account?
No.
Okay, so no Facebook and those apps that we talked about, the whole list of them. Any
I
from...
don't have an idea. I don't have a clue what that is.
Okay. You do have some legal interest, though. Is that accurate? We ask a question, watch TV shows.
I watched the OJ trial.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the Nuremberg trial on the military channel and the Ramsey case and I don't know, 2 or 3 other things on the I don't remember.
And you already mentioned the OJ trial. Was there any other trial that you followed closely?
I watched the Ramsey.
Okay.
And I watched the Nuremberg trials.
Right.
There were 2 trials.
Mm-hmm. There were a couple questions we asked involving your interaction with law enforcement. Have you ever had a negative experience with law enforcement? You ever had a positive experience with law enforcement? And if my notes are accurate, you had a positive response to both of those. So you've had a negative experience with law enforcement. Let's do that first.
Okay, I was going down Killian 78 Highway. I was going west. I was going to 103 West, the restaurant. I was remodeling the restaurant. Going west, this guy was coming east.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know how people do in Atlanta. They pull way out of the turn lane and get up on the red light and they run the light.
Mm-hmm.
But he was way out blocking the intersection. His intention was, he didn't want to stay back and wait on his green arrow. His intention was to get up there and either just not wait on the arrow and run the light. Well, he pulled into me and there was the intersection of Keegan Hill. There was a lady sitting here in a brand new Explorer. Mm-hmm. So he knocks me into her, and the lady policeman comes out, and she asked me what happened. I said, told her. And then she goes over here, and this Karen, this girl that was in the Explorer, she was irate. I mean, she was just, oh, you bashed my, you know. So she told the police what happened. So the police had the police report all wrong. She had the guy turning, and it was just a mess.
Okay.
I never got to change the report.
So you had 3 different stories because there were 3 people involved, right?
Yes. It was an intersection. Karen was sitting here. I was going west. He was coming east. He was way up under. But she put him at the intersection making a right turn.
I see. Okay. She got the facts wrong when she put it in a report. All right. And you tried unsuccessfully to get that sorted out.
Oh, I went up and talked to her. And it's hard to get into a police station.
Yeah. What about your positive experience with law enforcement?
Oh, I was here and I was going fishing one morning, and I never realized that when you get on the causeway going to Jekyll, that speed limit right before you get to that big bridge is like 35 miles per hour. Mm-hmm. I was going along about 55, 60. Mm-hmm. State Patrol pulls me over, and very nice. He ran my car, took my license. Mr. Gardner, where are you going in a hurry? I said, well, I'm going fishing. I haven't been fishing in about 2 months. So he says, okay. He says, you know, I like to fish too, so I'm going to let you go. So I always remember that.
Okay. Started off as a potentially negative experience, but ended up being positive. Okay, fair enough. Is there anything about either of those situations that would impact your ability to be a fair juror in this completely separate trial? You've given a statement to law enforcement before. You've already mentioned at least one. You had to give a statement for the traffic wreck you were in.
Yeah, I did.
Is there any other one you were thinking of? Okay. I think that's all I have for you, except for a couple of individual questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You doing okay?
I'm good, fine.
I don't have much at all. I just want to follow up on this accident situation you were talking about. I think you said it's hard to get into a police station. You said...
It is. They keep all the doors locked. You just can't walk in.
Well, believe me, it's harder to get out of a police station. I think what you said was that you went to get the officer to change the report. I take it you finally got in the police station?
No, sir. But they sent her outside in the parking lot.
Okay. All right.
And she told me, he said, it doesn't matter. She said, tell it to the judge. There's a law that says if you get caught at an intersection, they have the right of way. And I said, in that case, 50 people a day die here.
Okay. So it wasn't personal. She wasn't ugly to you or anything. It's just that she wasn't going to listen to you.
What I was saying. She took care of the statement.
And you're saying, Karen, did you know this lady?
No, I knew her after.
You knew her after?
After I wiped her Explorer out of here.
All right. And did you, in fact, take it to the judge?
No, I did not. The insurance said, and that's why I paid for you. So
insurance said, don't worry about it. You were right. It doesn't make any difference.
The guy jumped in an ambulance when right after the wreck happened, and all he wanted was just his hospital bill paid. And I agree. I mean, my insurance company, that's why I paid for you.
Exactly. Okay. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
I'm excused. I'll be back to the jury room, and I will be calling you when it's time. Thank you all.
That's all I ask for the jury, please. Please let yourself on that.
Would you let Mr. Purdue know we're going to start with 25? There's no reason to go out of sequence.
Okay. Be seated, please.
Here you go. Let's proceed.
All right.
Hey, Juror 25. I told you a couple of questions that we just needed to revisit, and we wanted to do that in a more private setting, as private as it can be. And there are a couple of areas in particular that I just wanted to talk to you about briefly. You had raised your hand for a question that the judge had asked very early on. Has anyone here formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused? Do you remember raising your hand for that? Okay. And similarly, kind of along those lines, there was a question: has anyone here, you think you know anything about this case from any outside source other than coming to court, either from the media or someone else? Do you remember that? Okay. And I think you raised your hand for that question as well. Okay. So that's kind of the two topics that I need to follow up with you on. Understand this. Nobody lives in a vacuum out there. We understand that people are going to hear things and maybe know things, and people talk to other people that they don't know, have a crystal ball to know that they might be called as a prospective juror in the case. Does that make sense? So we expect, like normal human beings, that sometimes you're going to hear things, and you might form even opinions because of some of the things you hear. Does that make sense too? Yes. The issue for this particular case is not whether or not you may have heard something. This case has to be tried on the evidence in the courtroom. Does that make sense? And that evidence has to be judged on the law that only the judge will give you. Does that also make sense? Yes, sir. So the question is, if you were selected as a juror in this case, would you be able to, no matter what you may have heard or thought about outside of court, base your decision in this case as a juror solely on the evidence presented in court and the law that the judge gives you? Would you be able to do that?
It's a really touchy subject to me because I have such like a 3-year-old. It's just really hard. I can't answer either way.
Okay. So let me ask you this way: from what source do you think you've heard information outside of court? Is it something from the news, or had you heard somebody talking about it?
Yeah, just like news. My aunt lives in Atlanta, and she it's just.
Okay, so you think from the news and your aunt, is that correct? So let me ask you a little bit about the news. There were news stories from when this initially happened, and there have been some recent news stories that we know about too when the case came down here. Do you think that you first heard about this way back when, or is it something that you started hearing about more recently when the case came here?
My aunt was the one that way back when, but recently on the news.
Okay. And what did you hear specifically on the news?
Just about the baby in the bag.
Okay. All right. And one of the questions that was posed to you is, has any family member talked to you about this or other person talked to you about it? I think you've already answered that question. You're talking about your aunt from Atlanta, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How close are you to this aunt?
She's not my real aunt, but I've grown up with her. I mean, she has cancer now, so we're planning a visit down there, like, soon.
Sure. Okay. Are you and your aunt so close that whatever opinion she might have or whatever thought she might have, you're just going to automatically adopt that, or are you capable of kind of being a free thinker and judging things on your own?
I'm definitely a free thinker, but it's just, like I said, it's just really close to home for me.
Sure. Well, and let me ask you that. I think you indicated you don't know the defendant personally, never met him, don't know who he is, correct? Is whatever feelings you're feeling now, is that more general about the situation and not specific to him? Would you?
Yes, not specific to him.
Okay. So in this particular case, we haven't presented any evidence yet. As many witnesses testified. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
All you've heard about is stuff that's happened, in the media and things like that. Before anything could even happen in the case, the states would be required to prove its case. Does that make sense? And unless and until we brought evidence into the courtroom to show a juror such as yourself, there would be really no opinion and no job for you to do as a prospective juror because no evidence is brought to you yet. Does that make sense? So the question is, would you require the state to bring evidence to show that happened, and not just this general feeling that you might have before you came to court based on what you've heard? Would you require the state to do its job and present its case?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also have the opinion in my head. You know what I mean? I already have like a
Sure.
I'm just
super nervous.
That's okay. And don't be nervous. There are no wrong answers. All right. You remember when we said that when you first came in? We're just trying to find out a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your situation. And everybody's different. Like I said, they don't live in a vacuum. So don't be nervous because you're not going to say anything that's going to be like a wrong answer for anyone in the courtroom. Your answers are your own. Does that make sense? Okay. Really what we're trying to get at is whatever opinion you hold now, do you think that you could set that aside so that you could judge this case on the facts and evidence? Because sometimes the media gets it wrong. Would you agree that the media is not always right?
That's true.
Okay. And it could be maybe that your aunt even has some facts that aren't entirely accurate. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if that's the case, then this case can't be judged on any of those things or any opinion that you might have before you come to court. It has to be judged.
I'm going to object to the way he's talking to her now. He's basically telling her how to answer what can and can't be. And I object to the way it's phrased.
I disagree with that, but I'll try to rephrase it.
All right.
So my question, ma'am, is would you listen to all of the actual evidence first and not what you've heard about outside the court in rendering your decision if you're selected as a juror?
Yes.
Okay. And similarly, if the judge gave you the law in the case and told you that's what the law that you have to apply to, not what your opinion is, but what the law is, would you follow those instructions about the law in the case?
Yes.
Okay. So based on that, I know you have an opinion, and you've given us the opinion. Would you agree that your opinion is not so strong that you couldn't listen to the evidence in the law?
Yes.
There are a couple of other questions that were asked. And sometimes we lawyers, sometimes we try to be really careful about our words, and sometimes we're better at it than we're not. So there was a question that says, well, look, do you think you would be unable to sit as a juror if this was a case involving some photos that you might have to see or something like that? Is that more just a general feeling that you'd prefer not to see those types of things? Okay. I think if anyone asked in this courtroom, most of us would say, hey, as a general rule, we probably wouldn't want to see anything like that. You weren't thinking of like any specific loss in your life or anything like that when you were thinking about that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Just 1 minute, ma'am. I don't think I have any other questions for you. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you speaking.
For the defense.
Hey, are you okay? Do we need to take a minute for you? Do you need something to drink?
I'll be okay.
You sure? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm sorry. Did I leave my chart up there?
I won't look at it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we can proceed.
I understand this whole mechanism of the way that we're doing jury selection. If you haven't been through it before, it seems really odd and awkward and intimidating. We've got all these people in here and everybody's kind of looking at you. I want you to know that you can't say a wrong answer. Whatever answer you say is the right answer because it's your answer. And believe me, everybody's got all kind of different answers. Okay? Does that help put you maybe a little bit more at ease? Yeah? Okay. All right. Now, when the I tell you what. Let's start with what you heard and what you think you might know about the case. Now, you told us you had an aunt in Atlanta, or a woman who you're close to, who you consider an aunt. And I take it that over the last 2 years or so, she has given you some information, or have y'all talked about this case? Okay. Can you remember sort of time frame when she started talking to you about it? Was it all the way back in June of 2014? Or?
Yeah, I believe because my daughter was like a year old, so it was about that time.
Okay. And is this mostly on the telephone, or would it be through texting and
Yeah, just telephone.
telephone? Okay. Did your aunt, by any chance, did she live in Cobb County?
No, she lives like more near Marietta.
She lives in Marietta?
I'm not exactly sure like where exactly, but
Okay. All right. And before I get into specifically what your aunt may have told you, did you also at the same time, did you see anything on television or hear anything on the radio or see anything on the internet about the case?
no, I only heard her opinion first, and then like years later, that's when more stuff on the news and like through Facebook and stuff.
Okay.
And that's when they started I feel like that's when they started campaigning more about the babies and dogs in the car.
Okay. That's the point in time when you started hearing more of the public service announcements and the warnings and that kind of thing. All right. So you sort of link those warnings, you sort of link them in your mind with this case? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, again, don't worry about hurting anybody's feelings, but we do need to know what she told you. So did she express an opinion to you about what she thought about the case?
Yeah, just like that, how you can just leave the child in a car for that long of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you expressing to me, was she telling you that she just didn't believe that that was possible?
I mean, also in my medical background, in a hot car, it's just, I don't know, it's just hard for me to fathom.
Yeah. Did your aunt give you an opinion about this case in particular? Did she give you an opinion about Mr. Harris? Did she indicate whether she thought he was guilty?
I mean, yeah.
She did? Okay. I know it's been 2 years. I know it's been a while, but do you remember when she was expressing this opinion to you, telling you that she thought he was guilty? Do you know, was she telling you any facts about the case, or anything that she had heard on TV or read in the newspaper?
Just basically about the baby being in the vaccine. I mean, that's really all I know.
Okay, that's what sticks out in your mind. Okay. All right, and I believe what you said was then sort of periodically over the next 2 years, you kind of got more information, all right? And was that more information you got, was it also primarily from your aunt, or was it stuff on Facebook and TV and radio?
The media.
Media, okay. All right. And the stuff that you then periodically heard on the through the media, was it consistent with some of the things that your aunt was telling you? It was. All right. Did it add any additional information or any other little facts or anything?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. And then what about anything that you actually saw, such as pictures on TV? Did you see pictures of a car or pictures of the child, or you didn't see any of that? Okay. Crime scene, anything like that?
I haven't seen any pictures at all.
Okay. Did you? What about pictures of Ross? Had you seen pictures of Ross at all? Had not. Okay. All right. All right. And so when you came in, I think it was yesterday. Yesterday was when you sat back here and had your hand up? Okay. That's when the judge asked the first question she asked was if you had formed and expressed an opinion as to the guilt and innocence, guilt or innocence of the accused. And of course, you raised your hand, said that you had formed an opinion, all right? Formed and expressed an opinion, and from what I hear you telling us today, was that opinion that you believe he's guilty? Okay, it's okay. Is that a yes? Okay. And just so that we understand sort of how that opinion was formed, that's why we're asking you how you received this information. But what I want to know now is kind of when you formed that opinion. So if your aunt started telling you this way back June of 2014, is that the time in which you formed that opinion that you believe he's guilty? Is that fair to say? Okay. All right. So you would agree that was more than 2 years ago, right? And has anything that you've heard or read or anything that your aunt has said to you in the last 2+ years, has anything changed that opinion? No? Okay. You and I are communicating, and I know it's, I understand what you're saying, but she has to take it down. I'm sorry. If you don't mind just saying yes. Okay. And, all right, so you've had that opinion for more than 2 years. You haven't heard or seen anything that's changed that opinion. All right. And then we come in here this week, and, of course, as Mr. Evans went over with you, you haven't heard any evidence. You haven't heard any testimony or anything. So would it be fair to say you haven't been exposed to anything in the last 2 days that's changed your opinion?
Yes,
Nothing has changed your opinion?
Yes.
All right. Yes, nothing has changed your opinion. All right. Okay. So you would agree then that's the opinion you still have today, the one you had 2+ years ago?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then you were asked if you were going to be able to listen to the evidence, and you indicated you're going to be able to do that, right? Okay. You're shaking your head, nodding yes. Okay. You think you can do that? You think you can listen to the evidence?
Yes.
All right. And you think that you can listen to what the judge tells you the law is?
Yes.
You think you can do that? You want to do that, right?
Yes, if I have to.
Okay. But are you going to be able to set that opinion aside that you've had for over 2 years? Or is it still going to be your opinion?
I'm not sure.
Okay. You think you're going to have some trouble setting that opinion aside? That's a yes?
Especially with pictures. I just don't think I can do it.
Okay. Is your opinion that he's guilty, is that pretty strong? It is strong? Okay. We did ask you about images, and you raised your hand for that. Okay. I know this is difficult for you. I'm sorry. I promise you we're almost... Don't apologize. We're almost through. All right, so the question that I asked yesterday was if anyone believed that they were going to be unable, if they just think they're going to be unable to sit, basically just sit and look at pictures of a deceased child. You raised your hand. All right. Is that still your belief that you're just going to be unable to do that?
Yes.
Okay. I also asked if anyone believed that they were going to be able to sit and listen to descriptions of how a child dies in a hot car. And you raised your hand for that. Okay. And is that is that still your belief that you're just going to be unable to sit and listen to that kind of evidence? You're just not going to be able to do that, are you?
All emotional now, I can't imagine being in the courtroom.
Okay. Listen, you're a young lady that's got a lot going for you. I'm real sorry that this has been difficult for you. Okay, you've done great. Thank you.
You're excused till October 3rd, 9 o'clock in the morning for jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind. Don't discuss this matter with anyone or let anyone speak to you about it. Have absolutely no exposure whatsoever to media, Google, Facebook, news sources of any sort to do with this case. And if you step out with Mr. Chesney. Yes. Next juror.
Hey, Juror 27, no surprise to you, I told you we were going to talk about some things that you'd raised your hands about in general, and I gather you expected that. I certainly told you up front that we were going to do that. Basically, you had raised your hand to a series of questions that the judge had asked very early on. One of them was, have you formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused? And I believe you raised your hand for that question. Is that correct? Okay. And then there was a question about, do you think you're perfectly fair and impartial to both sides? And I think you raised your question for that too. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And if you were asked those questions now, would you still be raising your hand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I also gathered from a conversation that we had just a little while ago, and I think I started to glean from it yesterday, about you having posted some opinion about this case online. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So everybody comes to court differently with their own personal experiences. We don't live in little bubbles. We don't live in a vacuum. People have got all kinds of different levels of exposure to the media and sources of information, and it's perfectly acceptable for people to have opinions when they come to court and things like that. That's really not what the issue is. The issue for us is that no evidence has been presented in this courtroom in this case yet, and that's what would be required. The state has to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt by bringing evidence in the courtroom. So the question I pose to you now is, if you were selected as a juror in this case, would you be able to listen to the evidence and base your decision solely on the evidence presented in the courtroom and the law that the judge gives you?
I know that I'm supposed to tell you that I can set it all aside, but I don't know that I can.
Okay. Well, first of all, you are not supposed to tell me anything other than...
Well, I know the law says that I am supposed to be impartial and that is my civic duty, but I honestly don't think that I can.
Okay, and that's why we wanted to bring you in separately and have a discussion about that. And part of the reason that we're doing this more private context is so you can feel free to express your opinions. But for this particular case, even for those opinions who maybe have formed and expressed an opinion, whether it's online or otherwise, the law would require that for them to be seated as a juror in the case, they would be required to basically set that aside, leave it at the courtroom, leave it at the courthouse door, and base the decision in this case solely on what's presented in court and what the judge instructs you in terms of the law, which hasn't been given to you as a juror yet. So the question is, would you be able to do those things, leave the opinion at the door, and judge this case solely on the evidence in the law?
I don't know that I can.
Okay. And why is it that you say that you don't know that you can do that?
I'm a very opinionated person.
Okay.
I'm just a very opinionated person, and once I have my mindset on something, it does not usually change.
You're not going to offend anyone here. Tell us what your opinion is that you've actually expressed.
That he's guilty.
Okay. Is that opinion so fixed and determined that you do not believe that you'd be able to set that aside for purposes of being a juror and judge this case based on the evidence?
I don't believe that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
You need to return October 3rd at 9 o'clock for jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind and don't discuss this matter with anyone else or allow anyone to discuss the matter with you, and that would include discussions electronically. You're not to allow yourself to be exposed in any way to any media, news, Facebook, any other accounts of anything even vaguely connected with this. Yes. Next juror, please.
Juror 28, we told you we were going to ask some questions in a little more private setting, so that's what we're doing right now. And the first couple questions I have for you are based on some general questions that the court had asked you when you first came in as a prospective juror. Mm-hmm. And those questions were, has anyone here formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused? And I believe that you raised your hand for that one. Do you remember that?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. All right. So I'll just ask the question now. Have you formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused?
No, sir, I haven't.
Okay. The other one was the judge asked the question. I believe the question dealt with impartiality, and essentially it was, can you be fair to both sides? And there was I believe you raised your hand and said you were not sure that you could be fair to both sides.
I can kind of feel that way.
Okay. You kind of feel that you can be fair? Let me ask it this way. Let me start over. I know that you raised your hand and indicated that you know something about this case from before you came to court, either from the media or from somebody else. Is that correct?
It's from the media.
Okay. So the issue in this case is not what you may have heard about in the media, because we don't live in a vacuum. We all hear different things. You may talk to different people. Every one of us is human. Every one of us is a little bit different. But this case, we haven't presented any evidence yet, and the evidence has to be brought into the court by the state where we bear the burden. We're required to prove our case, and if we can't, a judge would tell a jury that you need to find the defendant not guilty. So the question is, if you were selected as a juror in this particular case, could you set aside anything you might have heard about before you came into court and base your decision in the case on the evidence presented in the courtroom with the law or the judge's instructions that she gives you on how to judge that evidence? Could you do that?
Yes, sir, I could.
Okay. So let me ask you, what is the source of the information that you think you got from about this case prior to coming to court? Was that local media?
I guess, yeah, it would be Fox 28 out of Jacksonville.
Okay. Was that recently, or is that something that happened a while back?
It was, I want to say it was the Monday before I had to be here.
Okay.
First time.
Okay. So just a few weeks ago then.
Right.
Did you hear anything about this case when it first happened back in 2014? Do you think you heard anything about it then?
Yes.
Most of the media reports recently talked about the fact that the case was coming down here and was going to be tried in Brunswick. Is that one of the reports that you're referring to?
Basically everything I heard.
Did you hear them discussing any facts of the case or any allegations of the case at all?
No, sir. It was like flipping of it
Okay.
on the TV.
So what is it? Do you think that you learned from that quick flipping through the channel?
It's more of, I raised myself. My son, from his mother left me. I raised him from the time he was a newborn to he's 23 now.
Right.
I know how I would feel about my child.
Sure.
And how I took care of him.
Sure.
And it's more of a moral thing for me.
Okay.
I think moral of children.
Sure.
And my son is one of them too. And they all deserve a chance. You know?
Absolutely. Is that why you raised your hand when the judge asked you some of those initial questions, what we call the statutory questions, just thinking generally about?
In general, yes.
Okay. I know that we asked you the question, do you know the defendant, Justin Ross Harris? And you indicated you don't know him personally.
I don't know either.
So any thoughts that you have on the case, are they more just general opinions? It's not specific bias towards him?
Yes.
Okay.
General opinion.
Despite those general opinions that you might hold about children and those types of things, despite what you may have heard about in the media, would you be able to listen to the evidence in the case and base your decision on that and not on anything else outside of this courthouse?
Yes.
Okay. And would you also be able to apply the law that the judge gives you in the case in reaching your determination?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to talk about this too much, and you know we're using juror numbers because we want to protect people's privacy and things like that. And the media's been instructed not to show any jurors. They're not supposed to do anything like that. And I hope you know when I ask these questions, when I'm talking about arrests and stuff, I'm not trying to get into stuff to bring up old wounds or anything like that. And I appreciate the fact that you were upfront about us with that. You have a little bit of a history, and is there anything about that would lead you to believe that you couldn't be fair and impartial in this case, or can you give both sides a fair shake?
I can give both sides a fair.
Okay. I saw at least one thing that involved, I believe, a minor and maybe a motor vehicle.
Yeah, that was during my days.
Okay. Is there anything about that situation that might impact your ability to be a fair juror?
No, sir, because what had happened there is I just ran up to the store. He happened to be in the vehicle with me.
Okay.
And I happened to be drinking.
Okay.
We were a block away from home.
Okay.
It wasn't like it was something terrible.
I totally understand. I had to ask about it. Just
I have no problem with that.
Okay. And I appreciate you being up front with us. I don't think I have any other questions for you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so initially you had raised your hand on a couple of questions that the judge asked, and one of the questions was that is your mind perfectly impartial between the two parties? And you raised your hand, and the judge gave some explanation about what impartial meant. Is that still your feeling, that you're not exactly even Steven between both sides?
I believe I'm even, Steve.
You think you are even Steven? Okay. All right. And so the first question that the judge had asked is if you had formed or expressed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the accused. And you raised your hand for that question also. Okay? So let me just ask you, when you raised your hand, had you at that time formed and expressed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of Ross Harris?
I had more of an idea, not an opinion.
All right. What was that idea?
Not understanding the circumstances of what had happened, in between. However, I don't know how to explain that.
Okay. Are you changing your answer then? When the judge asked if you had formed and expressed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the accused, are you now changing your answer to no?
Yeah, I'm changing mine.
Okay. So you're changing your answer to that first question, and you're also changing your answer to the third question about your mind being perfectly impartial. Because originally, yesterday, you raised your hand and said no, that your mind was not perfectly impartial. Are you changing your answer to that question as well?
I am impartial. I haven't heard anything, so I don't know anything.
Okay. Well, that's fine. I just want to make sure. So you're changing your answer from both questions that the judge asked you yesterday.
Judge, I'm object to the phrasing of the question. I think he's explained that he misunderstood when I was asked the question. There's a distinction between changing your answer versus discussing whether you misunderstood something.
Well, the juror can answer, and he can explain that if that's his answer. The juror just needs to say what you have to say. Well, it's okay.
I did not form an opinion. When you said the opinion thing, I wasn't thinking about the young man that's involved in this or the state. I just know I heard on TV. And that's about it. I've got other stuff going on, so I really didn't think about this court case.
Well, you don't need to be uncomfortable.
I'm very uncomfortable.
Well, I want you to take a
Y'all haven't noticed.
And I don't want you to be. Because there are no wrong answers and there are no right answers. They're simply your answers.
Yes, ma'am.
And you just need to sit there, take a deep breath, and just the truth that is your truth is the truth that belongs here. And it's going to be respected. Period. Does that help?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm still nervous.
Well, I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah. Considering I haven't been in here in about 10 years. So.
I think that's fair enough.
I have not made an opinion.
Okay. All right. So you're now telling us you do not have an opinion as to guilt or innocence, and you're telling us that you believe that your mind is perfectly impartial between the parties, even Stephen, exactly the same.
As of right now, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. You said all you know is what you heard on the TV.
Right.
All right. So what'd you hear?
Just that it was going to be here in Glenn County.
That was it?
Yes, sir. And then I got the letter in the mail.
Okay. All right. I know this may sound like a silly question, but do you want to be on the jury? You do not? Okay. All right. So I'm going to pick up where Mr. Evans left off. He was asking about a case involving a minor. And I'm assuming that was your son?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember what year that was, by any chance?
2000, actually.
2000. Okay. All right. Was that Georgia State Patrol?
It was Glenn County.
That was Glenn County? Okay. All right. Was that from July of 2000?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And in that particular case, I say you were adjudicated in March of 2001. That sound right? Okay. And was that a plea?
I pled guilty.
You pled guilty.
I knew I'd done wrong. I knew it.
Okay. So did you have a lawyer that time?
Sir?
Did you have a lawyer that time?
No, sir.
No lawyer. Okay. All right. And I think when you were out here and we were going over the questions when everybody was out here, did I hear you say that all of your arrests were alcohol cases?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You didn't have any other kind of, you didn't have arrests for anything other than alcohol?
Not that I can remember. How about that?
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you, do you remember an arrest for theft by taking in McIntosh County in 1991?
Oh, man, I shot a hog.
Okay.
Now that you bring it up, yeah, I just graduated high school.
All right, you shot a hog.
Yeah, I can explain it. Let's see where we were at. I was living in McIntosh County. I was hanging out with my buddy. We were out in the backyard. What we thought was a wild boar that was chasing us, coming at us. But he went and got a gun, and me and him both shot him.
Okay. All right. And was that 1991?
1991. I graduated in 90.
All right. And that case was dismissed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Is that the only non-alcohol related arrest that you've had?
As far as I can remember, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. In January of 2014, did you get arrested on a drug charge?
Yeah, McIntosh.
Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't actually marijuana. Yeah, it was marijuana. It was, my son had left him. I can't say this, but he had left his weed in my truck, and I didn't know about it, and I got pulled over for tail light, and I went to jail free.
Okay. All right. So you agree that was what? A little less than 3 years ago?
Yes.
All right. And that was not an alcohol arrest, right?
Right. I actually forgot about that.
Okay. All right. And ultimately that was, you said that was your son's weed, and so all that got dismissed, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So other than the 1991 case involving the hog and the 2014 marijuana arrest, are there any other non-alcohol related arrests that you may have forgotten about?
I can't remember, buddy. All I do is work, and I try to keep my mind on work, so I stay out of trouble. If I've forgotten something else, then I must have.
Okay. All right. Obviously, we've asked you a lot of questions, and we tried to do this in sort of a private setting, such as it can be. Is there anything else that you need to tell us? Anything else that you need to tell us about that may have any bearing on whether or not you would be an appropriate juror for this case?
But I'm aware of it, sir.
Okay. Judge, if I can have just one moment, real quick. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just one quick follow-up, Judge. Okay. That last one that you were just asked about, the marijuana, that actually has been dismissed. Is that correct? Already.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I just want to make sure.
I think we're done. We're going to excuse you until October 3rd at 9 in the morning for jury selection. Now, keep it up in mind. Don't discuss the matter with anyone at all. Don't let anyone speak with you about the case at all. And have no exposure of anything to do with this case. Media, Facebook, explorations by you, information coming to you, absolutely nothing. Create a barrier completely so that nothing comes to you.
Don't work.
There you go.
What date, ma'am?
October 3rd, 9 a.m.
9.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Let's have number 29.
Hey, Juror 29, this is no surprise to you. You knew you were going to come back in here. We're going to ask you some things in a more private setting, correct? Okay. I want to ask you, first of all, about some responses that you gave to some of the judge's general questions at the very beginning. And a couple of questions he asked about were whether you'd formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused. And I think you raised your hand. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other one was, are you perfectly impartial between both sides? And if you're not, raise your hand. I think you raised your hand on that one, too. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And let me just ask you this. Is this based on something that you've heard in the media, or is this based on something based on your own personal, unique experiences?
I don't have any experience with this.
Okay. So you did raise your hand and indicate that you had heard something about this case in the media. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in this particular case, if you were selected as a juror, you would be required to base your decision in the case on the evidence presented in the courtroom and the law that the judge instructs you, not on anything that you may have heard outside the courtroom. Would you be able to do those things, or do you think you've heard stuff that are just created such a strong feeling in your mind, such that you raise your hand? That
I just have a belief in my head that it's not possible.
Okay. Okay. And when did you form that belief?
As soon as I heard about the story.
Okay. And when is it that you heard about the story?
Quite recently, or it might have been when it happened. I don't remember.
Okay. That feeling that you have, that opinion that you hold, that you respond to the judge's question, is that so fixed that you think it would be difficult to
change it? I don't think anyone's going to.
Okay. I had some additional areas to cover with you, but based on that response, I don't think I have any other questions for you.
You have a nice afternoon, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to excuse you till October 3rd at 9 a.m. for jury selection. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss the matter with anyone or allow anyone to speak with you about the case. And don't allow yourself to be exposed in any way to any media coverage, Facebook, or whatever. Nothing electronically about the case. October 3rd. Come back at October 3rd, 9 a.m. jury selection. Juror 30.
Juror 30, almost done with you. We just had a couple questions we wanted to bring up in a more private setting. Specifically, when you first came in here, you were asked a general question by the judge. The whole panels were all together. Has anyone here heard anything about this case, maybe from the media or outside the court prior to coming to court? And I think you indicated that you may have heard something about this case. Is it on the news? Okay. So in this particular case, it's perfectly okay for people to have heard about the case, and a lot of people have got different levels. Some people watch the news regularly. Some people don't watch it at all. They just catch it in passing. Perfectly understandable that different folks might come in with, having heard different things from different sources, be it the news or relatives, whatever it may be. The issue is, if you're selected as a juror in the case, you'd be required to base any decision about the guilt or the innocence of the accused solely on the evidence presented in the courtroom in conjunction with the law that the judge gives you, okay? And not on anything else you may have heard about before coming to court. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the question for you is, if you were selected as a juror in this case, would you be able to do that, to base your decision solely on the evidence presented in the law that the judge gives you, and not on anything else that you may have heard about prior to coming to court?
Of course.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you, the media information that you've heard about, was that at the time back in like 2014, or is that something more recent, or a combination?
It would be recent. I didn't really know anything about the case until I read it in the newspaper.
Okay. Is that local news, or? I know, for example, we've seen a lot of the local media. Part of our job is we see what's out in the media, and there's been a lot of media about the trial being transferred or coming down to Glenn County. Is that sort of what you're referring to?
No, it's just what's transpiring up to this to get to jury and stuff like that.
I got you.
No facts or anything like that. It's just what's going on.
Got you. I'm glad you mentioned that no facts portion, because right now we haven't called a single witness during the trial. We don't even have a jury yet. Haven't presented any evidence in the court. And of course, the judge hasn't given any instructions to the jury about how one should judge that evidence. So having not heard any of that evidence, despite what you may have heard in the media, do you think you can keep an open mind and listen to the evidence and base your decision solely on that? Of course. All right. The only other thing I want to ask you about, and this is part of the reason why we're trying to respect everyone's privacy by using juror numbers, and the media's been instructed not to show any jurors. They know not to do that. I showed that there was like a little bit of a minor thing maybe in the 70s in New York. Does that sound right? Something that may have been dismissed? Okay. Am I accurate that was something that was dismissed?
Yeah, I mean, it was something silly that my friends did.
Okay.
I was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Sometimes those old records, it's hard for us to go back and look at them. I just wanted to confirm that's not an issue. Is there anything about that will lead you to believe that you couldn't be fair in this particular case? All right. Thank you. So that's all I have for you.
All right, so you indicated that you had been exposed to some information about the case, but what you're telling us now is it was only the fact that the case was here?
Exactly.
Okay. So you haven't heard anything on the TV or radio about the facts, about evidence or the lawyers or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
And I couldn't judge until I hear facts.
Okay. Right. You believe that you can decide this case based on just the evidence?
Yes.
Okay. And as we sit here today, you believe you're impartial between the parties?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you would agree that you would be able to wait until you heard all of the evidence before you made a decision? That's evidence from both sides?
Yes.
Okay. You indicated you want to talk in private about an arrest situation with your brother-in-law. All I want to know is this. Is there something about that would have any bearing at all on your ability to be fair to both sides? There's not?
No.
There was no? Thank you.
October 3rd, 9 a.m. Return here at that time for jury selection. October 3rd, 9 a.m. In the meantime, keep an open mind. Do not discuss this with anyone nor allow anyone to speak with you, and create a barrier between yourself and any media, Facebook, internet, Google, anything that you can possibly imagine that to do with this case is totally off limits. So we'll see you October 3rd, 9 a.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good day.
You too.
Yes.
Let's see, let's have juror 31.
Thank you.
Juror 31, we added just a few follow-up questions for you, based primarily on some of the questions that we were asked when you first came in here by the judge when she was asking questions to everyone. One of the questions, for example, was, has anyone here formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused? Do you remember that question? And if my notes are accurate, I believe they are. I think you raised your hand to that question. And then there was a question about being impartial and whether you could be impartial. And I think you indicated that you thought that might be an issue for you.
Yes, it would be.
Okay. I know that you also indicated that you think you know something about the case from some other source, maybe media or something like that. Is that accurate? Okay. So in this particular case, it is perfectly okay that maybe you've heard something about the case prior to coming to court, may have even talked to folks about it. Probably for a lot of jurors, we found out that a lot of that stuff happened before they even got their jury summonses, and didn't know that were going to be prospective jurors in the case. And that's perfectly acceptable because we're humans and we don't live in a little bubble or anything like that. We're going to be exposed to things on occasion before you come to court. The real issue is that, sometimes the media doesn't get it right. Would you agree with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. The real issue is that to be a prospective juror in this case, one would have to be able to judge the case not on what you may have heard about prior to coming to court, but instead on the facts and the evidence as presented in court. And I know you know that based on your work in defects, correct? Okay. So the question for you is, if you were selected as a juror in this case, would you be able to make a decision on the guilt or the innocence of the accused based solely on the facts and evidence presented in court with the law that the judge gives you? In other words, could you agree to forget about the things that you've heard about in the media and judge the case solely on the evidence?
It would be very difficult.
Sure.
Very, very difficult.
Okay. Based on what you've heard and understanding the rules that we bear the burden, the state's got to be able to prove its case. Right? If we didn't do that, you'd be instructed that you had to acquit the defendant. And similar such rules, are you saying that it would not be possible to leave that, or just that it would be difficult?
To be honest with you, I've already convicted him.
Okay.
So no, I don't think I can be objective at all.
Okay. All right. And this opinion that he's guilty, when is it that you formed that? Was that early on, or is that something more recent?
Early on, right after it happened.
Okay. And do you feel so strongly about your opinion that you've already convicted him that you don't think it would be possible to listen to the evidence and apply the law? All right. Thank you, ma'am.
For the defense? You're excused till October 3rd at 9 a.m. for jury selection. In the meantime, keep it up in mind. Don't discuss this matter with me. Don't run away from me so fast. just wait when you finish. I mean, you're easing out the door. Give me a second to get my spiel out. Okay. Keep it up in mind. Don't discuss the matter with anyone or let anyone speak with you about the case. Have absolutely no exposure. Media, Facebook, whatever social media you use, whatever. No exposure to anything to do with this case whatsoever. And we'll see you October 3rd at 9 a.m. Thank you. Juror 32? 32, yeah.
All right.
I can see you just fine, sir. You're good. Hey, Juror 32, we wanted to bring you back just to cover a couple of topics and do it in a more private setting. In fact, you kind of indicated that you would like to do that too. So this is as private as we can get it. And I'll just refer you to you by juror number. Nobody's going to know, who you are or anything like that. But first question is, I know the judge asked, is there anyone here who thinks that they may have heard something about this case prior to coming to court, maybe in the media or something like that? And I believe you indicated that you had. Is that correct?
Yeah, I heard it like it was on the national news.
Okay.
basically like a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Okay, so you heard when it very first happened.
Yeah, and then once I got my summons, I haven't been watching the news or anything.
Okay. In this particular case, if you were selected as a juror, you would be required to base your decision not on anything you've heard outside the courtroom, but instead on the evidence that's presented in court and the law that the judge gives you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. And if you were selected as a juror, would you be able to follow that instruction? In other words,
Absolutely.
Okay. You base your decision solely on the evidence and the law, not on anything you may have heard before.
Yes,
okay. The only other area is we asked about arrests, and you said, can I address something more private? I've got it here.
Yes,
so just explain what the situation is, and then I got to ask you some legal questions to make sure that you're qualified and to be a juror based on your history. Tell me a little bit about what we got here.
Well, I used to drink a lot.
Okay.
Had quite a few DUIs.
Okay.
They made me a convicted felon.
Yep.
I sent off to the state of Georgia. I stayed clean and been good ever since, and got me a pardon from the state of Georgia.
Yep.
My record is no longer a convicted felon.
Okay.
I had this other issue. Mm-hmm. It went under the First Offenders Act.
Right.
I don't have to speak about it because I'm not convicted of anything.
Right.
Now, I was arrested for it, and it always show I was arrested.
It will. Yes, correct.
That's right. And I had another thing with aggravated assault. I was arrested. Mm-hmm. And what it was is my brother, we had our house broken into, and he was in front of the person that did it, which was actually Steve Holland and Molly Hatchett. He got hooked on drugs, and anyway, I'm serious. So he went running at my brother with a bat, and I beat him with it, and I hit him with a stick. Mm-hmm. And it was thrown out of court, dismissed.
Okay.
It was self-defense.
Okay.
And then my son he's done time in Georgia State Prison.
For what?
Conspiracy to commit armed robbery.
Okay. Is he in now or is he out?
No, he learned his lesson.
All right. Okay. So and that was the question I had. You know, if you're a felon, you're not eligible to serve on a jury, and your record seems to reflect that you completed your first offender on the burglary. And you now explained the second part. I saw this notation. It says, pardon civil, political without restoration firearms rights. So you've actually gotten some sort of...
I got my rights back.
You got your rights back.
I don't need a gun.
Right. Okay. Mr. Bourne.
I think that's all I have for sir. I don't have any questions.
I'm going to excuse you, but these are your next directions.
Yes, ma'am.
Come back October 3rd, 9 a.m. for jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind about this matter and do not form conclusions about the case. No contact whatsoever with anyone to do with this case. You are not to allow yourself to be exposed in any way whatsoever to anything about the case. People talking about it, you talking about it, no. The media, no. The internet, no. Facebook, no. Anything you can think about. The blogosphere, no.
No internet, I don't have to turn it on.
Well, then we're in good shape.
Yes, ma'am.
So come back October 3rd, 9 a.m.
I'll be here.
Thank you, sir.
Y'all have a great day.
Yes, sir. You too. Let's have juror 33.
How you doing? All right. The last series of questions we got to talk to you about, and we wanted to do it in a more private context. One of the questions the judge asked you generally, collectively as a group, is there anyone here who thinks you might have heard something about the case prior to coming to court? And if my notes are correct, I believe they are, you indicated that you may have heard something about this case. Yeah. Is that from the media?
Media, also, like I said, my brother and my mother-in-law both live in Atlanta, and they talk about it.
Okay. Did the things that you've heard about this case back then or more modern?
Some back then, some more modern. It's about half and half, I can say.
If you were tasked with being a juror in this particular case, you would have to base your decision solely on the evidence presented in court and the law that the judge gives you, not on anything you may have heard outside the courtroom from the media or from a family member or anything like that. Would you, as a juror, be able to do that, to base your decision solely on the evidence and the law that the judge gives?
I would like to think I can, yeah.
Okay. What is it that you may have heard about the case?
Just some of the specifics of what had happened, some of the allegations. Just generalities, really, nothing super, super specific.
Okay. Just generally what the case is about, then?
Yeah.
Is there anything about having heard about, we're all human. Everybody hears different things. You have different conversations with different family members. Some people are news freaks. They got to watch the news all the time. Other people just kind of see it in passing. So, everybody's different. And understanding that, what you would have to do as a juror is agree that, hey, whatever it is you may have heard out there, the decision in this courtroom's got to be based on evidence and law and not on anything else. Would you agree to do that? And could you do that?
Again, I would agree to. I would hope that I would be able to separate.
All right.
Again, like we said, being human, I've heard it's going to be my brain.
Right. You heard me say that this is another topic now. I'm talking a little bit about criminal histories and things like that. And we changed our jury system a few years back. I think it was like late 2012, 2013, where now we have issues with whether people are even eligible to serve because of being a convicted felon or anything like that. I know that you indicated that you know people that are arrested, including yourself. Is that correct?
Well, I was. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry?
I know my brother was.
Your brother was. Okay. Okay. You've never been arrested or fingerprinted?
Fingerprinted, but not arrested.
Okay. Tell me how you were fingerprinted and not arrested.
It was fingerprinted for something. I was going through the GBI. I was doing something for Sea Island, and they needed to do a security check, and that's what they did.
Okay. Where does your brother live?
Kennesaw.
Okay. Have you ever been to Eastman, Georgia? All right. Just one second. I can make sure I keep it dry, but I don't want it to be out there publicly. This information here, that's birth date. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's yours? Mm-hmm. Okay. This record appears to be associated with you. See, this, and this.
Hold on a second. Ladies? No. That's only another number.
Okay. Don't give me your whole social, but give me the last four.
0613.
Okay. Let me look into this and make sure.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, okay. I don't think at this point I have any other questions. Thank you, sir.
Has anything like this ever come up before? No, it's not. Okay. I mean, you've got kind of a common name. Do you know what the year it was that you were fingerprinted?
Oh, good Lord. 83, 84.
Okay.
Around there.
All right. And to the best of your recollection, that's the only time you've ever been printed?
Yeah.
Okay. And just for the record, because we've got some of this information associated with the GCIC, approximately how tall are you?
5'10".
Okay. All right. So you indicated to us that your brother and your brother-in-law and your mother live in the Atlanta area?
My brother lives in the Atlanta. Mother-in-law lives in the Atlanta.
Mother-in-law. Okay. But they don't live in Cobb County, right?
No, sir.
All right. And if I understand what you've conveyed to us, you were in some form of communication with them, and they have given you either information that they have heard in the media or given you their opinion about the case.
Yeah.
That's fair to say?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And don't worry, you're going to hurt anybody's feelings with your answers here. But we need to know what they told you. So let's start with your brother. Did he tell you any specific facts that you can remember over the last 2+ years?
Just about the cause of death, some of the background of the accused. I think that's about it.
Okay. All right. And when you say background,
Well, some of the things that were coming up as far as what the allegations of things that had happened and so on and so forth.
okay. And again, you're not going to hurt our feelings, but we need to know specifically, best you can recall, what did he tell you background-wise?
Just things about internet searches and things like that.
Okay. What internet searches did your brother tell you that he had heard about?
I think he had mentioned about how long it takes for someone or a child to die in a car, that's been closed up, it's been hot, things like that.
How long it takes a child to die in a car?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you believe your brother conveyed to you that that's information that he'd heard about the case?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. All right. So what other specifics can you recall, or what you call background, can you recall that your brother told you?
That was really it. I mean, we didn't really talk about it a lot. I mean, when it happened, he brought it up, because I asked him about it, because I heard about it a little bit. Of course, we would talk on the phone. Hey, heard about this, and he would tell me a little bit, that kind of thing. So, I mean, that was really about it, just a little bit of that kind of capacity.
It's totally unfair for us to ask you to reconstruct a conversation that may have been 2 years ago.
You're right.
And so, I mean, it's totally unfair, but obviously that stuck with you. So that stayed in your mind. And are you indicating you just can't remember any other very specific facts that he conveyed to you?
Not really, no. I mean, it is with the conversations. Sometimes certain things will stick, and some things are just general, just as you're talking kind of thing.
Yeah.
You just kind of go over the same thing over and over again, just from different angles and that kind of thing. That's about it.
All right. And you said during these conversations, you said, well, you already knew a little bit about it. And was that because you had actually seen something about it on TV or internet or radio? Okay. And again, I really apologize for asking you to try to remember something that was more than 2 years ago, but to the best of your recollection, what do you remember seeing or hearing on the TV?
Just when it happened, we were doing that, the arrest, and really that was about it. From there, it was just usually going back over the same things over and over again. But of course, since they went over a lot, you kind of have to see it a lot.
Right. All right. What about location? Do you remember? Did you see anything on the TV about location?
Not as much. That part I don't remember as much.
Okay. did you learn anything about the relationship between the child and Ross Harris? In other words, were they related?
Yeah.
Okay. And you got that information from the TV? Right. And do you know what that relationship was?
Father.
Okay. Did you get any information, either from your brother or from the TV, about what Mr. Harris had done that morning?
No, I don't remember anything about that.
Okay. What about what he had done any time during the day?
Well, I think I've heard from the TV about it going to see somebody. I can't remember the specifics of that, though.
Okay.
I just think I remember that.
Heard he was going to see somebody?
Yeah, I just can't remember specifically who.
You mean that particular day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And then you talked to your mother-in-law.
Yeah, not as much. I just pretty much the same information from her. She usually talked to my wife more than anything else.
Okay.
But, what few times we did talk at gatherings or whatever, she would mention it, just kind of general conversation.
All right. And the most specific thing that you've conveyed to us that you remembered was an internet search, how long it takes a child to die in a car. For whatever reason, that stuck out in your mind.
Well, it's just kind of an unusual thing to hear when you hear an accusation like that, to hear that is something that comes up. It's just kind of one of those things that sticks in your head. It's kind of unusual.
Yes. All right. So that was kind of the basis of the information that came to you. All right. Now I want to know if your brother or your mother-in-law or your wife, any of those three people expressed an opinion to you about what they thought about the case.
All three did.
All three. All right. And did they all have the same opinion? And was their opinion that he's guilty? Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Is that okay with you? I'm sorry. Do you mind just saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. And were these opinions expressed recently or over the course of the last 2 years?
Over the course of the last 2 years and recently too.
All right. When you say recently, you mean last couple of weeks after you got your summons?
Actually, before, when I told them I was summoned, I didn't know I was coming forward.
Okay.
That's when they brought up, that's going to be down here. Oh, I didn't know.
Okay. Your brother, mother-in-law, and wife. All right. And so yesterday, when the judge was the first one to ask you questions, one of the very first things she asked was if anyone had formed and expressed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the accused. You raised your hand, right, and indicating that you had formed an opinion on that subject. All right, and what was that opinion? Okay. And is it fair to say that opinion, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. When was that opinion formed during the last 2.5 years or so that you've been hearing about the case?
It was fairly early on.
Okay. When you say fairly early, maybe as far back as June 2014 when you very first started hearing?
Yeah, it was first started hearing about it, yeah.
Okay. And over the last 2+ years, have you heard anything or received any information from TV or from your wife or brother that has caused you to change that opinion?
No, sir.
Okay. So your opinion today then is still the same as it was the last 2+ years that he's guilty?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And obviously we haven't had the trial yet, and you haven't seen any evidence, obviously. But would you characterize your opinion as pretty strong?
Right now, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And you were asked if you would be able to base your decision on the evidence, and you certainly want to be able to do that.
Yes, sir.
All right. And I believe your answer the first time was, I would like to think I can, and that's an honest answer.
Yes, sir.
And then I've got written down here, I would hope to, but it's going to be in my brain.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you say, but it's going to be in my brain, are you talking about your opinion that he's guilty?
And what I've heard so far, yeah, it's going to be hard to separate that out. I'd like to think that I can be impartial. I'd like to think I have that capability, but I'm also human and know that just because what I want it to happen, it's not going to happen. So I'll be realistic.
Okay. And I appreciate that answer. But it's really kind of two issues. Being impartial is different than setting your opinion aside, and so that's really what I want to get at first. Is, I mean, when we get right down to it, if you're on the jury and you've got to make a decision on the evidence, I mean, are you going to be able to set your opinion completely aside?
I think I would be able to.
Okay. Do you want to be on the jury? You would be surprised.
I would be if you said there's a lot, yes.
Okay. All right. So you believe then that you're going to be able to, if called to set, you're going to be able to set your opinion completely aside and decide the case on the evidence and the law the judge gives you?
I would like to say that I absolutely could, yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned the word partial, meaning what the judge is asking originally is if your mind was perfectly impartial. You didn't raise your hand for that, I don't think. I don't think you raised your hand for that. And is that still your opinion that, as you sit here today, your mind is perfectly impartial between the two sides? Not favoring one over the other at all?
Right now, where I sit in the middle, I wouldn't say I'm totally impartial. I'd be lying if I said I was. Now, would that change? I don't know.
Okay.
But honestly, now I'm not.
Okay. All right. So if you're not totally impartial, that means you currently favor one side or the other. And is it that you, at this time, you're partial to the state, or you favor the state?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If I can have just a moment.
Amen.
Thank you.
A couple real quick follow-up. The judge would tell you whether you favor a side or not that, we, the state, are required to prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm sure you probably heard that just in basic common lay understanding. If you are selected as a juror, despite any impartiality you might be feeling right now, would we follow the judge's instructions regarding our obligation to prove the case and hold us to that burden?
I would.
Okay. I think I've sorted out this. I just want to confirm one other thing. Yeah, I don't mean to freak you out or anything like that.
I'll read it.
That's okay. Well, I think you have a common name, which is part of the issue. So it's possible that somebody has picked a name that happens to be yours. Is this a 66? Okay. Note here, if I showed you that, that's a 68. Okay. Yeah. So I'm feeling more at ease. I hope you are too. I think we're getting to the bottom of it now. So I just wanted to confirm that. That's all I have.
Just one follow-up. Ms. Evans asked you about making the state carry their burden. If the judge were to charge you that when we start the trial, you have to presume that Mr. Harris is innocent, the presumption of innocence, you're going to be able to set your opinion aside when we start the trial and presume that he is innocent.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to excuse you until October 3rd, 9 a.m. for jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind. Do not discuss this matter with anyone. Don't let anyone talk to you about it at all, relatives included, especially relatives. Don't be talking to them or listening to them. Just go, no. Wrap yourself in a cocoon of ignorance about this. No media, no internet, no blogosphere, no Facebook, no nothing about this. Nothing on the radio, nothing about this is to come within your awareness. And we'll see you October 3rd, 9 a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We'll meet juror 34.
Hey, Juror 34, we just have a few questions to take up with you in a more private context. Need to ask you, first of all, the judge asked you a few questions when you first came in here. You collectively, as a group, asked if you heard anything about this case prior to coming to court, and I think you indicated you had. Is that correct? Is that mostly from the media?
From the media.
Okay. Then she asked you some questions as well. Have you formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt of the accused? Did you raise your hand for that question?
Yes.
There was also a question about impartiality and whether you were perfectly impartial between both sides, and if you were not, you were supposed to indicate so. Did you raise your hand on that one as well?
Yes.
Okay. Did you raise your hand on those issues based on what you've heard in the media?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just ask you. You seem like an opinionated person. I think you would admit that, would you not? The question is not whether you may happen to hold an opinion or how you got to that opinion, whether you've heard things in the media or anything like that. The question is whether you could judge the case based solely on the facts presented in the courtroom and the law that's applied to it, not on anything else. There's no wrong answer here, so just be honest with us. Have you formed an opinion that's so strong that you think you would not be able to do that?
I really don't know. I have critical thinking skills.
Sure.
But I do have certain prejudices.
Okay.
Because I have little grandchildren. I raised 2 little boys. And I adore children. I just love little children. And that's why I followed that Casey Anthony, because it really bothered me. So, I can't really answer you because I really don't know.
Right.
I don't know once I'm in the courtroom and I'm listening to all of this. I have no idea.
Sure. Well, you're not going to hurt anyone's feelings here. The opinion that you form and express regarding the guilt of the defendant, is it that he's guilty?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And it sounds like it's a pretty strong opinion based on what you just shared with me. Would you agree with that too?
I think it's pretty strong from what I read.
Okay. And is it mostly what you read in print, or have you also seen things on TV and things like that?
News reports, in print, in the newspaper. But those are basically the 2 main things. I really haven't I haven't seen anything on Facebook, really knowing that I may have expressed an opinion. I haven't on Facebook.
So everybody's different. So some people are more opinionated than others. If you ask my family, they said, you're not going to change his opinion once he gets one. That's just the way some people are. Some people, on the other hand, say, hey, whatever it is I may have formed, I'm going to be able to keep an open mind, and it just depends on what kind of person you are, and you have to be a little introspective about that. Am I judging based on what you're telling me that it's good, it would be difficult to change that opinion?
Again, I have critical thinking skills. I'm a relatively intelligent person. So I do weigh things. I'm opinionated in that once I weigh everything, once I use my critical thinking skills, you have to do a lot to sway me.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. Hey. When we spoke to you earlier, you had shared this experience, and Mr. Evans said he was going to follow back up with it, but I'm going to follow back up with it about, you said 6 years ago you had received a ticket. You said the police officer lied, and you said that experience may have an impact on your ability to be fair, and that's as far as we got. What else can you tell us about that you think that we ought to know?
It was a one-up thing. It happened. To know that this police officer lied, it really did kind of color the way I look at law enforcement. But my brother was a sheriff's deputy for over 30 years. So again, I'm kind of weighing, but it didn't fit well with me. The only good thing that came out of that is the judge could tell he was lying and saw the ticket and said, yeah, he threw it out. So on one hand, the judicial system was fair.
Okay.
Law enforcement wasn't fair.
All right. What was the ticket for?
It was not stopping at a stop sign.
Okay.
He said, I rolled through the stop sign.
All right.
And it's not that big of a deal, except I knew that he lied, and I was going to let it drop.
All right. And when he came and brought you the ticket, you said, that is not true. I did not roll through that stop sign.
No. I'm smart enough to not argue with a police officer while I'm in a car, so I just didn't say anything. Okay. And I've learned that through the years. Sometimes it's better just not to say anything, accept it, and then fight it later on.
All right. And you did not hire a lawyer to go to traffic court? Okay. But you went. You showed up.
I went and told my side of the story and explained what happened.
All right.
And then I pointed out some inconsistencies on the ticket, and then the judge kind of took it from there.
Okay. And were you there? Did the police officer give testimony to the judge as well?
The judge asked the police officer, do you remember? There was like almost a year between the time it happened and when I showed up. The final, when I went before the court. And the judge asked the police officer if he remembered me and if I'd caused any problems or anything. And quite frankly, he couldn't remember who I was. And I had not caused any problems. So he kind of just stood there. And the judge looked at him and then looked at the ticket and then asked me a couple of questions. And that's when he just said, I don't believe that she did this. Yeah.
Good. If you ended your legal career right now, you're batting 1,000. Congratulations. All right. And my notes indicate that is the only bad experience that you wanted to bring to our attention. Bad experience with a police officer.
Yeah.
It was.
That was the only that in my life.
Okay. You indicated that you had formed and expressed an opinion that Mr. Harris was guilty.
Yes.
Who did you express that to?
probably my husband. I mean, that isn't, I haven't been talking about it. It has not been like the main thing on my radar right now. So like I haven't been like on Facebook talking about it or anything else. It's just one of those sad things that happen that you read about and you kind of form an opinion. And, we're talking about a small child here.
Right.
So naturally, what you read in the media and what you see on the news, and then there were, all these other mitigating circumstances, then you start to form an opinion.
Okay. When you say mitigating circumstances, what are you talking
Well,
about?
there were other things, beside the child being left in the hot car, then there were things about pornography and some other things that I had read about, and,
Okay. Well, tell us about those. What did you hear?
I think, if I remember correctly, I've been online with like some underage, texting some or sexting some pictures, and so it seemed to me in my mind when I was reading all of this, he had, maybe he wanted to get rid of his kid because he wanted to go on with his life, and maybe he was going to divorce his wife. You start to form all of these things from what you're reading in the media. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know whether, that's where you're getting information from, and then you start to form an opinion, and I did form an opinion.
Excuse me. Maybe he was going to divorce his wife. Is that something that you think you heard on TV, or is that just something that you came up with after hearing stuff on the news?
I just came up with that after hearing what I heard.
Okay. Did you hear anything about internet searches?
Seems like I did. I think what I heard was that he was doing some searches on how does a child die in a hot car, how long does it take for a child to die. I believe I did hear that.
How does a child die in a hot car? All right, and you think you heard that on the TV as well?
I believe I did.
Okay, it could have been Facebook.
I don't think it was Facebook. I just haven't seen a lot about this on Facebook.
Okay. I don't even know if we asked you where you got your news. Do you watch the national news at night, or is it the local news?
Mostly I do Google News.
Okay.
I'm always on my phone looking at Google News. I really don't like the national news. I think it's biased. Okay. So maybe I'll get like big stories on the national news, but I don't watch a lot of national news anymore like I used 2 years ago. Most of my news comes from the internet now. And the newspaper. We have a subscription where I work. And so I have an online subscription as part of my job. So I'll look at our local newspaper.
Okay. And do you believe that informing this opinion that you've shared with us, do you believe that you factored into it this internet search information that you heard about on the news? Is that part of it?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Any other facts in particular that you think may have made you form this opinion? Anything else you heard on the news?
No. It isn't something that I've discussed with my friends. It's not really been on our radar.
Right.
There's so many other things going on right now in the world. It's really not, as tragic as it is, it's not something I've been focusing on in the last few months.
Right. It has come back up in the local news, though, because the case is now down here. So have you seen any updates on the local news down here?
Actually, the last 2 weeks I've been sick, and so I have not been paying any attention to the news. I've been in bed, basically.
Okay. You sound better than you did. You were coughing yesterday, right?
I have acute bronchitis.
Okay.
And I tried to get out of coming in here because I was so sick. But obviously they didn't excuse me, so.
Okay. Sorry. Yesterday was rough, but you do sound a lot better. All right. What? You took a breath. Did you want to tell me something else?
No, I was trying to swallow.
Okay. Look, there hadn't been any evidence yet. You hadn't heard any testimony. You haven't seen anything. You're going to be able to decide this case on evidence. as opposed to stuff that you may have heard on TV?
You know, I've never been a jury. This is the first time I've ever been called for jury duty in my 62 years. And I've lived all over the United States. I've never been called. I've just worked for the state, so I know how the process works. But I've never been a juror. So I don't really know, sitting here with all the facts that are presented from both sides, I can't tell you. I can't tell you that because I just don't have that experience.
Let me ask it this way. Would you be willing, if you were on the jury, would you be willing to listen to everything the state had to say, then listen to everything the defense had to say before you made up your mind? Would you be willing to do that?
I would have to, because I think morally that's my obligation, and I do have critical thinking skills, which is weighing both sides. Having said that, I don't want to do it. You know, this is not a pleasant thing. This is awful. But push comes to shove, I am a moral, fair person, so I would have to listen to both sides. Do I want to do this? No. This is horrendous for me. You know, so I don't know. I've never been a juror. I don't know what I would be like. It might be a horrible, emotional thing for me. I just don't know. One more thing, I do have to bring this up, and it's been weighing on my head, and I think it's only fair to bring this up. And excuse me if I get upset because it really affected me. About 19 years ago, we were living in South Carolina at the time. And my son was 17. He was a senior in high school, and one of his friends, who was also 17, lived right up the street from us, literally like half a block from us, was having some problems with a girlfriend. He was a good kid, ROTC, smart, always helped us out, nice kid. And he had just broken up with a girlfriend, and he was having a really hard time dealing with it. So he tried to get help from the school counselors. He started cutting himself. He was really in deep pain. And the school counselors kind of blew him off. This is puppy love. You'll get over it. He went to his parents, who were very Christian-oriented. And he said, I'm having problems. And they just referred him to, like, well, you need to pray about it. And that's the backstory. Well, what he did was, one night he took a gun, one of his father's guns, and he went to his girlfriend's house, and he murdered the girlfriend's mother and the girlfriend's new boyfriend. And now he sits in jail with no possibility of parole from the time he was 17 years old. And it affected me so much because I felt like he was crying out for help and nobody would help him. And all the judicial system saw was this 17-year-old who had killed these two people and never even gave him a chance to redeem himself. Not even a possibility of parole. And I think about this kid a lot because it was my son's age, and my son went on to get married and have a career and have a beautiful little girl, and this kid is still in jail. And I always wondered if anybody ever even visits him. It was a horrible thing, and I'm not excusing what he did, but this is where I have a problem with our judicial system is I felt like there were mitigating circumstances. And this kid never got a chance. And I needed to tell you that because that could color how I see things. You know, a life destroyed and everybody's life around him destroyed. And as a mom, I had a really hard time dealing with it because all I could do was put my child in his place because we never know what's going to make us snap. And definitely a 17-year-old teenage kid. So
I appreciate you. Obviously, that was very difficult for you to share. You're telling us that because you just think that's something that we ought to know about your background in deciding that you might be an appropriate juror for this case, right? And that's why you're telling us this.
Right. I just feel like I was thinking about it, and I wasn't going to say anything, and I thought, no, they need to know because that is a part of who I am now.
Right.
Because that happened, and it was someone that I knew.
If you were to sit as a juror in this case, and you were to be instructed that you're not to concern yourself with sentence, because that's the, if there's a sentence at all, you're not to concern yourself with that. You'd be able to follow that instruction from the court, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'd have to.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know this has been tough for you, but you've done good. Thank you so much.
I'm going to excuse you, but I need to give you directions before you leave. Come back October 3rd, 9 a.m. in the morning for jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind and don't form conclusions about anything to do with this case. You are not to talk about this case with anyone, nor let anyone speak with you about the case at all, including family and friends, just know. And you are to insulate yourself from any exposure to anything to do with this case, from media, the internet, blogging, whatever conceivable place that there might be information is totally off limits. And we'll see you back here October 3rd, 9 a.m. And have a good evening. Juror 35.
Hey, Juror 35, and just a couple other topics, and then I think we're done with you. So one of the questions the judge had asked is whether anyone here has maybe heard something about this case before they came to court, either in the media or from family members or anything like that. And I think that you indicated that you had heard something about it. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that primarily from the media or from another source?
Yeah, my dad talked about it.
Okay.
That's one year that I pulled like 11 case.
Okay. And that was my other question. One of the defense questions, I believe, was, has a family member talked to you, expressed an opinion about the case or anything like that? And I think you indicated that maybe a family member had talked to you. That would be your dad.
No, my boyfriend.
Boyfriend? Okay. So in this particular case, as with all cases, you come to court and everybody's human, a little bit different. And some people are, they're media fiends. They watch TV all the time and want to keep up with the news, and others not so much. Maybe they get it from other sources, Facebook or whatever. The issue in this particular case is not whether or not you may have heard something about the case. The issue is if you're selected as a juror, you would be required to base your decision solely on the evidence presented in the courtroom and the law that the judge gives you, not on anything else that you might have heard about prior to coming to court. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the question for you is, if you're selected as a juror, despite anything you might have heard or talked about with boyfriend or father or whatever, would you be able to base your decision solely on the evidence presented in court and the law that the judge gives you?
Yes.
Okay. The media that you've heard about in this case, is it more recent or back when it happened?
I wasn't living in Georgia when this happened.
Okay.
I was living in Spokane. I saw a blip on the news when I was living in Spokane, and I called my mom. I was like, hey, what's going on? Heard about it. She's like, oh, it's nothing.
Okay. Did you get any of the details or anything like that, or just kind of a broad strokes picture of what was going on?
Just a little summary of what had happened.
I got you. And then your conversation, let's talk about your father first. We'll do it kind of chronologically as you brought it up. When is it that you had your discussion with your father about you possibly being on this jury?
When I got the summons.
Okay. And what, if anything, did y'all discuss when you got the summons? How'd that conversation go?
And he said, I bet it's that case.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it isn't. Knowing my luck, it'll just be for like traffic court or something.
Right.
Because I just thought it was karma that I got, because I made fun of him a couple months prior because he got summons.
Okay. Fair enough. You thought it's coming back on him, huh? And then what about with your boyfriend? When was that conversation?
Like a week before I came here the initial time.
Okay.
when everyone was here.
Obviously, before the judge instructed you, don't talk about the case or anything. Okay.
Exactly.
And how'd that conversation go between you and your boyfriend?
He told me to come in just to say, that he's guilty, so I can get out of it. I said, I can't do that.
Okay. Well, good for you. And again, there's no wrong answers here, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. Understand that what we've talked about, though, whatever your boyfriend, your father said, whatever the media said, this case must be determined based on the evidence and the law.
Exactly.
Would you be able to listen to that evidence and apply the law if you're selected as a juror?
Yes.
All right. I had one other question for you. It goes back to the question about forgetting or leaving a child, and you kind of snickered when you said, tell me what popped into your mind when you heard that question.
It was me.
Okay.
When I was 4 in Leavenworth, Kansas, my mom left me accidentally at the house while she went to Pizza Hut to go grab a pizza, and then she realized I wasn't there.
How long was that?
This was like 1984.
Okay. How long was she gone before she
I
realized?
think she was gone like maybe 20 minutes. Because we had a whole bunch of family in. It was like one of those Home Alone scenarios, counting all the kids.
Okay.
I thought I was in there.
Okay.
And I was sitting on the front porch crying. He left me.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure you can still hold it over her head today, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. Makes Thanksgiving interesting. Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions.
Your boyfriend's not going to tell you what to do, right?
No. The last one did. I got rid of him.
I got nothing after that. Thank you.
All right. I need to give you instructions. Come back October 3rd, 9 a.m. For jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind. Do not discuss anything to do with this case with anyone or let anyone speak with you. It sounds particularly like maybe not your boyfriend or whomever else, like your daddy. Create an insulated place for you where you are not in any way exposed to anything to do with this case. No internet, no media, no blogging, no Facebook, absolutely nothing in any way to come to you via about this case. And it's your responsibility to not find it, not see it, and if it happens upon you, to remove yourself immediately.
Yes, ma'am.
And then remember, October 3rd, 9 a.m., jury selection. You're excused.
Thank you.
And we'll need juror 36.
Juror 36, we've strategically picked the most difficult chair to get to in the entire courtroom for the last set of questioning for you. So we did that just to challenge you a little bit. I just had a couple questions on some of the topics that were raised when you first came in for juror service, okay? And specifically, the judge had asked at one point, have you formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the accused? And I think you raised your hand for that question. Do you remember that question?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And similarly, there was a question about media exposure and whether you may have heard about the case prior to coming to court. I believe you indicated that you had. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in this particular case, as in other cases, we don't obviously live in a vacuum. We're all human. Everybody's got different levels of information that they may get from the media or other sources or family members, whatever that may be. And that's not really the issue. You admit sometimes the media doesn't always get it right. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So understanding that the media